Welcome everybody. I hope you're all ready to listen to one of my heroes, Bachar Houli. Welcome to this wonderful Melbourne Press Club event. When I was asked to host and do a bit of research on Bachar, it was the most wonderful afternoon I've spent in many a month. Bachar, I just sat down and watched the 2017 Grand Final. Gee, you were stiff. Not to win the Norm Smith medal, I mean, and the groundbreaking first goal. Anyway, I won't bore you. Bachar's famous for coming second in 2 grand finals in the Norm Smith medal voting, but I'll always remember 2020 and that horrible hub year where Bachar and his teammate Shane Edwards stayed in Melbourne for the births of their children. For Bachar, it was Mohammed, and also he had his beautiful mum, very sick with COVID. It was at the very, very last minute. He got on a plane, and I remember calling Brendan Gale about a whole lot of other things, but really just wanting to find out how the hell Bachar and Shane would be able to front up and actually play in what hopefully was going to be a successful finals campaign for the Tigers. It really does take all shapes and sizes and colours and now sexes to play our wonderful game. But if you remember that year, Richmond was sort of the scourge of the AFL and making headlines in the hub for all the wrong reasons. And yet behind the scenes, as Brendan assured me this day on the telephone, you have never seen a more professional preparer or trainer than really both those blokes, but in particular, Bachar Houli. In fact, Shane Edwards, who played his 300th game and retired recently or announced his retirement, described you, Bachar, as a mythical creature. And it is mythical when you hear his story and how he defied his parents. He might mention that when he talks to you. Came to the Tigers from Essendon. What a sliding doors moment that was. And started up his programs back in 2012. Of course, started this wonderful foundation to which he's shown as much dedication and now more than he did to his footy. And of course, the rest was history in 2020. He did come to the hub, trained with Shane Edwards and Gary Ablett and a couple of others behind the scenes, went on to win the premiership, his 3rd premiership, play on for 1 more year, and then continue to do the wonderful work of the Bachar Houli Foundation. 7 employees in Victoria, 2 in every state around Australia, except for Tasmania, Bachar. Come on, we need to. Another, I think, a 3-year extension from the federal government. This is just a wonderful campaign. Let's hear from Bachar, and then I'll ask him a few questions and you can join in as well. Welcome everyone, and Bachar Houli.
Thanks, Gary, for that wonderful speech. I've got nothing else to talk about. I appreciate that. But firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, past, present, and emerging. And I'm honoured to be amongst a very important group to speak very briefly about my story. And please forgive me for all those that have heard it many times. I was speaking to a beautiful group of ladies down the back. They said they've actually read my book. I said, well, you might want to close your ears again, and because I'll probably be speaking very briefly about that as well. But generally, when I speak about, I guess, my story and my journey, I'd like to, split it up into the 4 Fs. And for those who've read the book, it's very similar. Family. I'll probably marry up faith and football together, and then finish off with the foundation and the stuff that I'm doing at the moment with the foundation. But my family basically came to this country, or moved over to this country in the 70s. They migrated from Lebanon, from a war-torn Lebanon. There was a civil war happening at the time. And they decided to make the move to Australia to give us a better, better lifestyle and focusing on education. My oldest brother kind of didn't really help us to follow because he became a surgeon. Very smart person. I actually don't even know what sort of surgeon he is. I mean, it's the stomach area, but for those who are smart, it starts with G, gastroscoro. Yeah, there you go, Caro. Thank you very much. That's how much I know about my brother. But no, he basically set the benchmark really high. And in the eyes of my parents was that if you don't become that type of person, a surgeon or those sort of likes, then you're not really successful. So that gives you the answer about sport. And they were far apart from sport and didn't want nothing to do with sport. So it made it really hard. It made it really hard for my older brothers who were playing local football at the time. They weren't very supportive, not supportive at all, I would say. So it made it really hard for me. But I didn't know any better. Being 11, 12-year-old, I just, would play at the front yard, at the park, at school, and never really felt like, I was going to get involved in local footy. And it wasn't obviously to my older brother who was courageous enough to say, I'm going to take it to a footy club. And obviously the journey began there. But back to my parents migrating to Australia, their main sole purpose and reasoning for Australia was, one, to make a lot of money, two, to give us a good education, and then to go back to Lebanon. That was their number one plan. They did that for 10 years, and then they went back to Lebanon. And within a year, they just couldn't handle it, because the fact that how blessed are we to live in such a fortunate country. And for those who've travelled around the world will know exactly what I'm talking about. Not that I've travelled all around the world, but anyone that you talk to, you realise from their words that we're so blessed to be in such a country that, accepts people from all walks of life. And, for me to be part of the game for such a long time, and, from the AFL code to just general people, the public, accept me for the person I am, it just makes me feel so proud to call myself as a proud Australian Muslim. So, obviously they went back to Lebanon, and they decided to come back because it was the way of life and a good upbringing for their children to get the best education. So I'm one of seven, my oldest brother being a surgeon, and the rest they were pretty successful at school. So they're all pretty smart, which they lived up to my dad's and my parents' upbringing. I'm not going to say I'm the dumbest one in the family. Excuse my language, but the reality is I didn't go past year 12. Could have gone and studied at university, but footy took over and decided to focus on that. I was doing a little bit of part-time university, but Brendan will probably say I should have went on and probably finished a degree by the time I finished footy after 15 years. But it was kind of tough because I was trying to battle my way to get a game at Essendon Footy Club. And that was like secondary. I didn't really worry about school. I just wanted to do well in football and make a career out of myself. But so that's kind of one little regret. But obviously the foundation work has helped me eliminate that thought process. So yeah, my parents living in this country, we were all living in one household. All of us had different interests in our life. But for me, I just loved football. I just was a person that would always have a football in my hands and just wanted to play as much football as possible. It doesn't matter what sort of level, I just wanted to play. And moving on to my older brother, who was courageous enough. I used to go do pizza deliveries with him every Friday, Saturday night. And one night, Friday night, he said, jump in the car. I was like, all right, sweet. Getting ready to go do some delivery driving with him and drop off some pizzas. But rather, he dropped me off at Spotswood Football Club, which wasn't far from my house, and just dropped me off at the club, and he said, I'll pick you up soon. So he introduced me to the coach, and we went on from there. When he went back to pick me up, the coach said to me, he goes, Carl, don't worry, I'll pick him up and I'll drop him off every single session. So obviously he was impressed. But being a young person, I just wanted to play footy. Didn't really think about a future. I just wanted to play football with mates and do what every young kid loves doing, and that's just playing football because they really enjoy it. So my parents didn't know, obviously. It took them about a year to find out. Good old best and fairest night. I don't know how I got away with it. That's the thing. Like there was this thing with me and my parents, and probably all the siblings. We didn't really have that connection. It's something like that I learned from growing up. Not that I don't appreciate my parents. I'll die for my parents, and I'll give them everything that that I need to give them in order for them to be happy. That's for sure. But when it came to communication, it was just far apart. It wasn't there. So for me to go back and ask them for advice and get their support, it was very, very hard to communicate with them. And that's something I'm going to do my best to change with my kids growing up, because no doubt they need it in modern day society with all the challenges that are present. So it was really hard. So I came home one night with a bunch of trophies. I won a couple, just best and fairest, leading goal kicker. That's just a couple. No, I'm joking. So being young, a 12-year-old, you're not going to go and throw your trophies out in the bin, are you? No chance. You're going to hold them with pride. I actually tucked them over under the jumper, thinking that I'll get away with it. But yeah, basically my parents were there and they weren't too happy. My older brother was there and just said, I think enough's enough. You weren't very supportive with me and like my older brother and his brother as well, my brother as well. But you weren't very supportive of us. Time's got to change. Let him play. So obviously my brother knew that the power of sport and what it does to an individual, because he was never given that opportunity. And like I said, their mindset was sport was this thing that was going to drive us away from education. If we focused on sport and played sport, then we had no energy and time to go and do well at school. And we all know now, obviously with studies and science that comes out now, how important sport is in one's life. So they were very ignorant about that, which is fine, but it changed. My father jumped on board about a couple of years later, fully supportive. He was a taxi driver at the time, so I used to just love seeing him, turn up to Sunday football, because you can't miss a yellow cab. Back then, they were only yellow. And I was just super pumped, like having your father there or your mother there supporting you. It's just it goes a long way. For a number of months or that first year, getting picked up by the coach, dropped off, there was contentment, but it just wasn't fully there. You just want family support and people supporting you around you that were super close. But then, my father jumped on board and started supporting me. He went to the extent of also, stopping his taxi for a week to go and travel with me interstate to support me when I played for Vic Metro. So he was there. And I always say to everyone, I don't know what it was, whether he was that passionate about what I was doing, or was it going to help him retire early because he thought I was going to earn some big coin at the highest level. You know what I mean? But I can guarantee it wasn't the big coin at the highest level. So, no, very grateful, of course. But like I said, the sacrifices he made was, something that you can never, ever repay. So obviously I owe it to my father and obviously my mother being a supporter that she was. So, it changed. It changed from not really liking sport at all to almost becoming like footy critics. Like I'd come home and mum would tell me, why aren't you going in for that ball? Why aren't you doing that? And I'll look at her like, Mum, you only started watching the game yesterday. What are you talking about? I didn't say that, of course, because I didn't want to offend her. But it's funny because it just showed how invested she was into the game. Early on, before she started to get a little bit tired and slowing down to an extent, she'd go and watch as well with my father. But when she didn't, she would watch it, religiously on TV with all her grandchildren. So, I'd like to say that I've made my parents proud to an extent, almost as much as my older brother, probably more. If you ask, probably the majority of the youth today, it's so upsetting that the fact that someone who's dedicated all his life studying in closed doors and saves people's lives doesn't really get the recognition of someone that of his calibre as compared to someone who just kicks a stupid footy around. Anyway, we've got to play to our strengths, I guess. So that was a little bit about my family. Now I'll move on to a little bit about my faith and football and that journey. So football began for me at the age of 12 at the local club of Spotswood, and then from there moved on, represented Victoria under 15s, under 16s, and under 18s in the national championships. I was, privileged enough to captain all those teams as well. So it kind of the journey was there, or the future was there, but it was up to me how much or how far I wanted to take it. And obviously, as you do as a young person, when you start to see inroads, you start to make sacrifices. So you start choosing the right people around you, making the right food choices, and certain things that you need to really take to another level. But my father was almost my number one supporter at the time. Just whatever it takes for me to reach my goal, he was there. And I remember at one point of time in my life, and a lot of people here would remember, bananas they skyrocketed. Like you couldn't even buy a kilo of bananas. It was very, very expensive. But my dad was that invested in me. He would just go buy, obviously kilos and kilos of bananas because he knew that that's one thing I liked, and two, it was going to give me energy to allow me to excel in my football. So, that's something obviously, that shows the investment of my father to my career. I'd like to add a little bit of faith to I guess my early part of my journey. At the age of 16 it was a time where I started to find myself and the person I am and the person I represent. I remember when we were playing in Adelaide, the under 16s national championships. I was in a room with two teammates, as you do, and I was obviously the only Muslim player in the team. And being Muslim, most people know here that we pray 5 times a day. We do certain things in our life that is probably a little bit different than the majority of people around. And that was a time where I simply felt like, when's enough? Like, I've got to kind of feel proud of my identity and who I am. At the age of 14, 15, you go and pray at local level. You pray behind the club rooms because you fear people looking at you and judging you and not accepting you. So, you can only imagine how hard it would be being so young and being a little bit different. So that was very, very challenging. But that changed at the age of 16. And I was courageous enough in that moment to really stand up and explain to these boys who I am and what I do. And I remember James in the room. He was just so loud, just so hard to control. And I think that was one of my roles, to try to calm him down a little bit, just to center him a little bit. So I said, James, can you turn down the music, please? I need to pray. He's like, pray, what's that? I said, we obviously pray 5 times a day, and I can't just keep stepping out of the room around the hotel to go and pray. I feel like, I'm comfortable to do it here if you guys would respect it. He's like, mate, go for your life. He goes, can we watch? I'm a 16-year-old. There's not enough pressure on the field, me performing, being a captain. Now he wants to watch me pray. But I said, yeah, no worries, James, no worries, all good. So I prayed. Mind you, it was one hell of a prayer. full dedication and concentration. But that was a turning point in my life. And that's the moment where someone who wasn't like me to an extent in terms of certain values gave me the courage to stand up and be proud of who I was. And he told me, he goes, does anyone know about this? I said, oh, no, not really. Actually, no one really knows what I do. He said, why don't you stand up in front of the group and use that as an educational tool, so people get to know who you are and what you do. And like I said, that was a turning point in my life. It gave me confidence, and then moved forward from there. 2006 was the year where I got drafted to Essendon Footy Club. So much hard work put in, waiting for that moment for your name to get called out on the radio back then. And it was nervous moments because I felt like, I was going to get picked up somewhere around, 15 to 30 in the draft picks. And when that moment went past, started to get a little bit nervous. My dad was even more nervous because he felt like, that was it. And then, when that moment came where I got picked up at pick 42 to Essendon, literally the Houli household erupted. Yeah, it was such a special feeling because, being obviously the first practicing Muslim to make it at the highest level, it just wasn't just about me and all the hard work I put in. It was about my family. It was about the community that I represented, which was a challenge at times, especially my first few years of footy at Essendon, because I felt like I had to make everyone proud, and then I was forgetting about what makes me a good player, and I just wanted to please everyone else. So that was a very challenging thing until a few years where I realised that I've got to work things out in terms of what makes me play my best football. So getting drafted to Essendon Football Club, a great opportunity. It opened the doors up for many more young Muslims to growing up who aspire to become elite, and not have that stigma or that that thing in the back of their head that because I'm a Muslim I can't achieve. And that's the one thing I love doing today, is the fact that I can have conversations not only with Muslims but also people from all walks of life, and instill that leadership and that confidence that they can achieve whatever they want in their life. Don't let your own values or your identity or whatever you believe in hold you back. And I just obviously use my experiences and how I grew up proud of who I was, and that in fact helped me become the person I am today. So that's why I love what I do today, which I'll just touch on a little bit shortly about with the foundation and the stuff I'm doing with young Muslim kids and other kids, of course, when I get the opportunity to talk at other schools as well. But Essendon was a tough period 4 years there, played 26 games. It's not something that you want. You want to, make AFL and play regular senior footy. And for those who don't know, probably very few here wouldn't know or would know, I guess. But once you make it to the AFL system, it's not like you've made it. And people don't know, like there's actually 45 players on the list and only 22 players get to play at one given time. The rest play in the VFL or the lower tier, and it's really hard. You think about you're trying to compete against the best 17, 18-year-olds at that level. It goes up to another level because now you've got the best of the absolute best in your club, and you're fighting with probably 5 or 6 other players who've got the same talent as you for that position. So, I battled for many reasons. I don't know exactly. I felt like I was hard done by, and that was the reason why I decided to move. I felt like I was good enough because I was a hard-working person. And, the runs were on the board on match day, but for whatever reason it was a bloody good decision, obviously to make that move. Thanks, Brendan. In 2010, that's when towards the back end of the year, I got dropped for one game, which I felt like I was actually one of the better players on field. And by then, with so much patience and perseverance, I just felt like this is it. I've got to really make a change in my life. I can't keep heading in this direction. So I spoke to my manager and he said, let's just see what's out there. He goes, I believe what you're thinking is right, and let's just see what else is out there. And that's when Richmond came to the table and offered me an opportunity where I felt like this is too good. This is too good to knock back. This is an opportunity where Dimmer's putting my name up on the wing, playing every game. Mind you, I never played wing ever. Damien, he's a man of his words, but I didn't play wing at all. But that was eye-opening for me because this is a guy who's a fringe player, struggling to get a game, to Damien Hardwick saying that, Bash, we rate you. Like you're part of our best. So for me, that was an eye-opening, and I said, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to be. Made that move. It was a great move because for many things, and people will argue, say, it's the 3 premierships, and all that, the success side of things. But for me, it was many other things because, one, being able to become a regular AFL player provides you with many other opportunities. And that is, one, the foundation that we've managed to create. Because, trying to create programs and not being a regular senior player, it's really tough. We all know, I'm trying to keep it or put it in words, where, the more people see you on TV, the more you become a bigger role model. And people will jump on board, listen to you, and you'll have more of an impact. So the right time for us was 2012, where we decided to start creating academies for young Muslim kids. And we decided to create academies, number one, for football development, to try to get more young Muslim kids in the AFL, because at the time, there was only one player, and that was myself, playing at the highest level. And we felt like, what can we do to help elevate this next group of young boys and girls? At the time, it was just boys, to help them fulfill their dream. And for 2 or 3 years, we did that, and we felt like, is this enough? And it wasn't, because you realise that, okay, well, we're not really getting players drafted, and people forget how hard it is to actually get drafted. There's only a very selected few that get drafted for a number of reasons. So we felt like we want to move forward, and what else can we create for our programs to make it like an experience that these youth can walk out and become better role models, better leaders. So we implemented a few other pillars in our programs, and it's helped our programs elevate and become very, very sincere. And it's, like I said, it's not just about football development. Yes, it's one pillar of it, but what we focus on in our foundation is giving these young men and women an opportunity at life to feel a sense of belonging. And we've got an incredible team that have got the runs on the board to share their experiences, and their journey, because they're the team that I've got, have been successful in their own field, and at the same time being very strong with what they believe in. So our message to the youth is to just dream big, and don't let your, I guess, what you believe in hold you back. And we find that it's a bit of an identity crisis today, where, when we speak to our youth, you see them like they've got names of Muhammad. For us, Muhammad is the most beautiful name that you can have in the Islamic culture, being after Prophet Muhammad, which I named my son after. We're getting these young kids change their name to Mo, Mark, Michael. No disrespect to the names, that's for sure. But you've got a name that you should be super proud of, and don't let that hold you back. But statistics did tell us that the fact that if you've got a name of such a name like Muhammad and Ahmed, these common Muslim names, that you're more unlikely to get a job. So the statistics tells us that it is contributing to them getting a job. So we're trying to break down those barriers and really just give them an opportunity to feel proud of who they are, and excel and do whatever you need to do in order to reach your goal. So I know I spoke a little bit back and forth, but hopefully it just gives you a bit of an insight about Bachar Houli, about the person he is, from parents migrating to Australia in the 70s, to my humble beginning as a footballer at a local football club, to how much my faith has added to me as a person, how it's helped me drive to be the person I am today, to, I guess, the one thing I'm the most proud of today, and that is working with the next generation growing up to help them be the best versions of themselves. So thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to listening or hearing your questions, and hopefully I can answer them. So thank you.
Fabulous. That's for you, sir?
Yeah.
That was great, Bachar. Well done.
Did
I think I might get my own mic.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Did you want to start with it?
Yeah, I will, actually. I have heard parts of that story before, and I think you underplay certain moments in your life, particularly that moment on the footy trip. Did James end up being a pretty good player, and who was he, by the way?
James was he was our ruckman at the time. He was like I said, like he was almost to an extent like. Obviously, he was a member of the team, our teammate, but he wasn't like one of the better players of the team. Obviously, he's a ruckman, very, very, very important player on the field, Brendan. But he was, he was just someone that I'll always admire, because you don't realise sometimes simplicity in life can create wonders. And he was a simple human being who instilled so much confidence in my life. And like I said, it was a turning point in my life where someone who, doesn't follow what I believe, doesn't follow what I believe in, gave me the courage to step up and say, you know what, nah, bro, be proud of who you are, because it's important to you. So, yeah.
And you've been doing that for the remainder of your life. I remember interviewing you in 2013. I think Simon Matthews and I cooked up this great idea because 75 of your family had become Richmond members. It went on to be 110 that year. And yet, as much as Richmond was wonderful in celebrating you and everything about the AFL's first devout Muslim footballer, I remember you then taking Simon to task because at the season launch there was no halal food. And so many of your family and friends had come along. And I wonder how tough that was too, as a younger player who probably hadn't quite cemented himself as your champion you went on to become.
Yeah, obviously there's many challenges, and that's why sometimes it's good to have Q&A, because you get to touch on the things that are still very important. Because as you know, I'm not a guy that writes down notes. I like to just speak what's from the heart, to be quite honest. But that's a good thing about Q&A. But yeah, it was a challenging time, because reality is everyone's eating, and you need to come up with excuses why you're not eating. And at the time it was tough, because Muslims in general were getting a fair bit of backlash, with obviously on the back of September 11, Bali bombings, and these sort of things, which for me as a Muslim was tough, and for many Muslims growing up, probably more particularly our females who wear headscarves. We had the instances that their headscarves got pulled off because they're Muslim. and that all of a sudden people thought that all Muslims were bad. Mind you, this was such a very, very small minority of people who claim to be Muslims. And in fact, I can almost guarantee you this is not the practice. And actually, sorry, not almost. I can guarantee you it's not the practice of Islam to go and hurt people. And it was very tough because there was a black backlash, and we were affected by it. But the great thing about it is we didn't sit at home and sook. Rather, we found that as an opportunity to go out and educate. And the best way to educate, as we all know, is through your actions.
And obviously you observe Ramadan, and it's been talked and written about before, but again, getting back to the food and the diet and preparation for footy, and that was something you were A1 at. How did you deal with, quite literally, the physical problems with having to front up and play when you hadn't eaten?
Yeah, it's when you've been doing it for such a long time, it becomes second nature. But just like everything, when you play football, you have a pre-season. You train really hard for 4 or 5 months. You get your body used to hard training, and then you start playing games. For me, Ramadan wasn't just a month of fasting where I just fasted that month. I started fasting probably a month or two before the actual month of Ramadan, almost the pre-season of Ramadan, so I can get my body used to it, and that wasn't a shock to the system. But that was down pat. Like that was sweet because when I was fasting majority of my life playing football, it was in the smaller hours of the day where we've got to fast. Whereas, in the next few years, it's going to be tough. And I remember I was playing cricket as a 10, 11, 12-year-old. We used to play cricket, and Ramadan was in summer. So for those who don't know, our Islamic calendar goes back 10 days every year. So you can imagine 15 years ago or 20 years ago, I would say, probably plus, it was in summer. And we're going back to that shortly. Ramadan now is in March. In 6-7 years' time, it's going to be in January. So that's where it's going to be very tough. So the heat element wasn't a factor. I prepared myself really well, and that's what athletes do. They prepare themselves and they get their body ready. But more importantly, it's just the connection that I had with the footy club and the respect. And that's something I admire and I love Richmond Football Club for. Not taking anything away from Essendon, because Essendon was fantastic. They gave me the opportunity and I am forever grateful for. But obviously spending majority of my footy career at Richmond, you grow this extended family and they learn about you and you open up, and there's an element of respect. And I was a guy that never, cut any corners. I come back always fit when it came back to pre-season. I never showed the fitness staff that I was weak at any time. So like I said, there was a mutual respect thing that the club just really valued me as a person and what I hold myself to be away from the football club. And when you're happy off field, you're going to play better footy, that's for sure. And that's what came from Richmond. And that was the Dimmer's motto.
So to widen that to the entire competition, probably when I became the Age Chief Footy Writer, they were building stadiums, but there weren't any prayer rooms in any of the stadiums. Now, I think every stadium, certainly in Victoria, and most of the ones I've been to outside of Victoria, have prayer rooms. How big a role did you play in that?
Yeah, a little bit. What you do is generally, because I come from a big community, and we, being the Muslim community, are massive followers of AFL. Huge and very,
all
very
those Richmond members, very passionate. To be looked after.
Yeah. Very, very passionate. I remember when I was growing up, and it's something that you do discuss with people from your local community. That what was something that held us back from going on the footy, and the number one thing was the fact that we couldn't really offer our prayers. For those who are courageous enough, we used to offer it in the car park or in the stairway. But we're always, you're always afraid someone might harm you physically or abusing you, and it's not nice, of course. But I guess it's really, really tough. Not that that we're shy of our prayer, but you just it's something that you normally do at home or in closed doors. But for us, because we pray 5 times a day, it's so hard to do all our prayers at home. For those who work, have to do it in their offices. So I felt like that was an opportunity to raise with the AFL. And once again, the leading code when it comes to diversity, no doubt. They were very supportive of it, put it forward to the stadiums. And yeah, it was established. And the greatest thing about it, it's not a prayer room for Muslims alone. It's a prayer room or a quiet room for all people. And that's the great thing about it, because anyone can go in there and offer their prayers or whatever they need to do. And from that, we've seen a spike of people going to watch the footy, especially from the Muslim community. That the fact they've got the comfort, they can watch the game, and at any time of the game, most times on the breaks, of course, they can go and offer their prayers.
So it's wonderful what you're doing with the foundation, obviously, and you mentor a lot of young Muslim sportsmen and women, and probably others as well. But and tonight we'll see another devout Muslim, I think, get an All-Australian blazer, potentially an Adam Saad. Why aren't there more Muslim men playing footy now?
Yeah, that's the question we keep asking ourselves, and that's why, as I mentioned before, that we needed to look for ways to continue to grow our programs and not just focus on football development. It's still a massive pillar of our programs, and the great thing about not playing footy anymore is I can dedicate more and more of my time and help mentor our youth through every avenue in their life, not just the football. Because, as I mentioned before, you know, sometimes your lifestyle doesn't allow you to peak as a footballer. Something might be holding you back. So what we do is we try to mentor our best youth who've got potential to be AFL players, and see what's going on in their life. Because we know there's always factors in life that hold you back. So I'm not going to guarantee, but I can assure you that in the next few years, there should be some sort of talent coming through and playing at the highest level. We already see in the last 2 or 3 years, we've got a number of them playing at VFL level. So we're making inroads, but we won't define our foundation, our programs by you making AFL or not. Rather, we're more focused on making you better human beings, okay? Because that's everlasting. A footy career might give you 5, 10, 15 years, which is great. But we're also focusing on how to bring you or make you the best version of yourselves for life, forever.
I want to open up to the room. I just got one more. I just want to go back to 2020 and how tough a year that was for you, ultimately triumphant, but so many challenges throughout the year, and how close you came to not joining the Tigers up in Queensland.
Yeah, it was a very, very tough period. You know, at the time, the birth of my son, and also, probably more importantly, my mother's sickness. Because at the time, you know, obviously early on COVID, hopefully everyone's over that to an extent, but it was very scary. It was very scary not knowing that, you know, your mum is going to make it back. And yeah, like I said, footy was a great part of my life, and it's helped me establish myself in so many ways. But my family comes first, no doubt. And the good thing is, once again, go back to the footy club. That is huge on family. So the club helped me make that decision.
That's true, but they wanted you up in Queensland.
Yeah, at the right time of the year, which Dimmer says, he's like, I don't care what you do now, but make sure you make it for finals. So, but yeah, it was a tough period, and I knew that I will make it, providing the laws allow you to go out, to go and you know, to travel. So did the hard 2 weeks in the hub, or the separate hub, I would say, and then go and join my teammates. And you know, at the end of the day, it was all worthwhile. Definitely worthwhile, because you get another premiership, and you know, I think I was very lucky to be part of that, because I tore my calf in the first few minutes. So to be part of that was all very, very worthwhile in the end.
That it certainly was. Are there any questions out there? Yep, we've got one over here. I think we've got a microphone.
Thank you. John Leaper from TLC Healthcare. Bachar, you talked about pride that you're going to be instilling in your son for his name, Mohammed, and I can well understand that. I've been puzzled by your own name, though. Can you tell us a bit about that? It sounds like a nickname that your mates would have given you.
Pretty good nickname to have, that's for sure.
Can you tell us about what experience you've had being called Bachar? Yeah,
well, the correct way of pronouncing it is Bachar. Good luck, Bachar. But yeah, ever since I was a young kid, and as far as I can remember, I was always known to be called Bachar. And yeah, it was a cool name. And mind you, I was like the furthest away from a basher, that's for sure. I was a lover, not a fighter. Apart from the moment against Carlton with the incident with Jed Lamb. Mind you, that was unintentional, of course. I served my time, that's for sure. But yeah, so what Bachar or Basher means in the Arabic language is the person who delivers the good news. So I'd like to say that I'm that type of person that delivers the good news and is always a positive person. So, but I don't think that it hasn't really have any like Islamic significance. So kind of helped me, I guess, in a way, where I didn't have a name like Muhammad Ahmed where I felt like I was going to be picked on. But what I did have was, obviously I had my prayer and halal food that felt like what people would potentially pick on.
Anyone else? Yep, over here.
Jenny Leaper, Bachar, thank you very much for such an inspiring talk. I'm reflecting on your dad's initial reaction with the surgeon in the family and now you wanting to pursue a sporting career. How are you finding the young people you're mentoring? Is there a change in their parents' reaction to what's going on in their lives?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt, I do see the parents' investment in their children's life. Why? Because the fact that most of them are born in Australia, so they know the culture and the way of life in Australia. And if they're not, they've spent a lot of time in Australia. They're either born back home wherever, and then spent a lot of time. So they realise obviously that they've got to spend time with their young ones and really invest and help them, obviously grow as people. So no doubt there's a massive difference when it comes to parents' engagement and their support. And we see that through the foundation because we get constant calls from parents. How's he going or how's she going? We love what you do, and give us a bit more insight about our son and stuff like that. So, but yeah, like I said, we've consistently got that communication with parents, and so the investment is definitely there. Investment from both education and also sport. So for me, the education side was there, but the sport wasn't there. Now, I'd probably say there's more investment in sport because people are realising the power of sport and what it does for one's life, especially with the challenges in today's society, yeah? With all the gadgets and the COVID not helping, that kids are lazy. Let's face it, they're actually lazy. Like, we're facing that, not all kids, sorry, or young men and women, they're not all, but we're seeing that for our foundation right now, where we've got a battle on our shoulders, where we got to be constantly in their ear, providing every single service that they need. You know what I mean? It's because we've got a role to play. So, yeah, there's always challenges in society which we'll always face, and I'm sure the next generation will face different problems and challenges. That's the battle of the world we live in. But yeah, definitely there's been a big growth of parents' investment in their children's life.
Thanks both, Bachar. David Polden from Inter-Ellison. I just wanted to ask about in developing these kids and just what the situation is regarding the various codes of football at the moment. So do you encourage them towards AFL, or are you just encouraging them to play sport generally? And what are the relative attractions of particularly the world game of football, soccer, and Australian rules for your community?
Yeah, I mean, I find that it's very culture dependent. So we find a lot of the Lebanese youth out there love football, AFL that is. You see more the African youth are more into basketball, soccer. So, like, once again, look, essentially, like, the reality is our programs focus on football development, but we realise that we can't just be very just narrow-minded about just that one game, because we want to open our program for all walks of people, like all people, and that we know that our programs have so much more to offer than just football development. Yeah, it's one of our core pillars, but if we're going to help them become more physically active, then that's a massive win for us. Or even just getting involved in the game. Look, we want to continue to grow the game of AFL, and we feel like the only way that it's going to grow is by having people from all walks of life who don't necessarily like football come in and give it a go. And we found that with the Bachar Houli Cup that we run in all the Islamic schools all around Australia. A lot of kids have never played Aussie rules, and all of a sudden they get a taste of it, and then they join local clubs. So that's a massive win for us, of course. But the other part of our programs is about education. You know, as I mentioned before, helping them grow to be the best versions of themselves. So we want to see more people make it to the highest level, and particularly AFL. But we haven't really had many other participants, favour other sports and really going to excel for them to hold back. But like I said, we focus on a number of things, and we encourage all sports, that's for sure. Leaning more onto AFL, of course.
Charlie Clancy from Kilwinton Grammar. I was just wondering if you had any role models growing up, whether it was for footy or for any other aspirations in life?
Yeah, that's a top question because I guess no doubt you're at an age or a time in your life where role models, mentors are so important. And it's one other thing that we always drive with our youth growing up, to have someone that you can fall back on and help you, assist you in life, because it's very hard to do things on your own. You need the support, whether it's life support, football support, whatever it may be. It's super, super important. For me, I had a person in my life from a football perspective who, was driven to see me succeed, because he's seen me play at local footy and felt like I had enough in me to make it the highest level. But, he just obviously knew the challenges that Muslims face in society, and he didn't want that to happen with me. Rather, he just instilled confidence, belief that, hey, go out, you can make it, providing you put the hard work in. So important to have people that you look up to. I didn't really have any footy role models in that. I was a Carlton supporter growing up. Kuta was my favourite player. Loved the way he played, but the reality is I was never going to become a Kuta. I had just people in my life. I had, the community leader who helped me, he guided me in my life from a faith perspective, because the reality is, the way I look at it is, if someone like that is helping me with my faith values, he's helping me with life values as well. Because faith generally teaches you good things, good character, being respectful, being punctual on time. All these type of values that you can add in your life help you become a better version of yourself, whatever field you choose. So I'm very grateful for that, of course, having those very important people in my life that at times when you haven't got the answers, they're there to help you up.
You pick up advice from all sorts of people, and you got some really good advice once from James Hird, didn't you, who you would have briefly played against, who couldn't convince you to stay at Essendon when he took over as coach, but he helped you with something that you really struggled with as a footballer, and that was pre-game, is that correct? Yeah,
most people out there get nervous before a game, as you would, anxiety, wherever, to a certain level. And I remember, pre-season game, when I started with Essendon, James Hird approached me and he said, mate, if you're nervous, it's absolutely normal, because I've played 200 and something games at the time, and I'm still super, super nervous, and I actually throw up before a game. So, and this is one of the greatest players to ever play the game. And I thought, you know what? I actually feel good about myself now. So it's actually, it's absolutely normal. But
did you ever conquer it?
Not fully. I guess the back end of my career I did, but it's always in the back of your mind, and that's what we were speaking before, Cara. That that's probably the least thing that I miss about the game. That moment around match day where you got to prepare. Once I was at the ground and the siren went, or I was on field warm up, I was sweet, absolute sweet. So I was a person that would hope one day Dimmer would say to me, hey, you can turn up to the game whenever you want, because literally I reckon I would have turned up 1 or 2 minutes before his meeting just to get out there, because I didn't want to think about the game. I just wanted to get out there and play, and I felt like when I got into that zone I played my best football. So, but in saying that, people prepare in so many different ways, and there's no real right or wrong answer, but the moment I stopped worrying so much is when I put a smile on my face and I played my best footy.
Any other questions? Yep, right here. Yes, sorry? No? Well, I've just got one more on that subject, and Trent Cotchin, I think, is the opposite to you. I think he loved being that bit in the rooms, getting ready beforehand. I remember after you got absolutely thrashed by Port Adelaide in an elimination final over at Port Adelaide, a horrendous day for the club. I think it was 2014 elimination final. And I saw you in the airline lounge at the end of that day, and there was a group of Richmond players by the bar playing cards and not partying, but generally letting their hair down. It had been a battle to make the finals. It was over quickly. And you sat in a corner with your captain, Trent Cotchin, and I think Ivan Maric was there as well. And you sat and Jack was leading the rest of them in the card game and the beers. And I remember watching the three of you and wondering what was being said. Trent looked inconsolable, and you and Ivan were talking to him. Are you prepared to share that, and can you remember it even?
I got the worst memory ever, Caro, and I can't believe you remembered that moment. But I can definitely remember the moment that I wasn't drinking alcohol because I don't drink alcohol. And there's two people at that footy club that obviously were my closest friends at the time, who had so much respect for the way I went about my life. But for me and
so they didn't drink either because
at the time, because they just felt like didn't want me to be left out to a way. But mind you, I don't intrude. At the end of the day, I don't look at you in any different way because you drink alcohol, whatever you commit yourself in your life or commit to in life. And I didn't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. But that, once again, it goes back to the quality group that I had around me, just full of respect, and would just go the extra inch and mile. But I can just imagine what Trent was going through that time. Obviously the coin toss at the time. Thinking that he was the failure of the footy club, but there was so much more to that game. I think it was so many other things, but as you do as teammates, as brothers, you support each other and you help lift each other, and that's how you build and become a successful team. It's not about blaming and shifting blame off yourself. You support each other, and it's a journey.
It is. So, Bachar, I was horrified to read at the end of that journey. I think it was in a brief interview with The Age earlier this year. I think Pete Ryan had been talking to you at a foundation event and mentioned that the Tigers were playing Carlton to launch the season the next day, and you claimed that you didn't realise that it was the first game the next day. In fact, you hadn't even realised the season was about to begin. Can that be true, Bachar?
110% true. It's at the end of the day, footy was a massive part of my life, and I felt like the moment I finish playing is when I disconnect. And then my only way to
that's really disconnecting.
That's really disconnecting. That's for sure. But what I have done is I continue to connect with my ex-teammates, and that's the most important part. Like, the reality is I can't do anything to that game or make a difference, But what I can do is continue to connect with my teammates and be there for them. So if they're going through a rough patch in their life or footy, whatever it may be, I'm there for them. And continue to be that role model and that mentor, especially for those young ones that I played with, and just continue to support them. And that's the most important part. So I am still connected to an extent, and I think that's the most important connection that you can have.
You just don't watch footy anymore?
I wouldn't say 0%. I'd probably say 2.5%.
But you do follow footy news, and I think I know the answer to this. We all watched an AFL coach go through hell last week, Ben Rutten. You were close to him when he worked at Richmond. Have you spoken to him?
I haven't spoken to him, of course, because you can understand the situation he's going through. I've definitely reached out, and as I do, to everyone out there that makes a big decision in their life or something bad or good happens, you just send a simple message of support. And I did, and he just replied a couple of hours. Obviously it's a tough period for him. The reality is life goes on. It's just like everything. And I'm going to go back to my situation. Did I want to retire? No, I didn't want to retire. I wanted to go on and play. I'm going to be honest about that. But at the end of the day, it's the best thing that happened in my life. So, things in life you're not going to agree to. They're not going to go your way all the time. So as human beings, we need to find ways to say, you know what, there's far more things to life than just that thing that's happening in your life. So I think if you get that concept, or you adapt to that, then you'll go through any form of hardship, loss in your life. So, and I think Truck is that type of person, and I think he's got the confidence, that the fact that he's a great coach, and I would love to see him come back to Richmond Football Club, because he's got so much more to offer. And that's the message I sent him.
Well, they've got a vacancy, so maybe he will. Bachar, thank you for everything you've given us as a footballer, for everything you continue to do into retirement, for navigating two such different worlds and bringing them together and hopefully making it easier for everyone who follows. I've heard that story, I've read your book, I could read it again and again. I could certainly watch 2017 again and again. Thank you for everything, and thanks for today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate it.